slightly convinced because you made a very short speech, which means I can make it even shorter. And, because it's not Brexit, then we feel that we're much more comfortable. But I've been a member of the Labour Land campaign for 20 years now. And I remember where, if we filled the telephone box, we felt that we had a real audience. And therefore we're overjoyed to see we have a real audience here. And people have turned on to this. It's taken a long time. It's taken a very long time. And I presume Henry George is still turning in his grave, but he's feeling that at long last maybe some people are willing to listen to him and understand that this is the time for this. Look, I was at a protest meeting yesterday morning. Yes, it's a Sunday, and the village hall was packed. For the usual reason, they are about to have plump on them potentially 5,000 houses. They don't like it. They don't like it because, like anything, it seems to be an imposition. But when you tear away the arguments, one of the strongest reasons why people resent development is they just don't trust it anymore. There is no guarantee that all the promises of infrastructure, schools, roads, community provision, there's no guarantee any of that will happen. And that's why we've got to change the system. It's not a question of do we want to change the system, it's a question we have to change the system. It's not fair. It doesn't work. And one of the reasons I'm very strongly convinced of its time is due is what other way can we build local government? Now, I've been a councillor in one way or another for 30 odd years, and an MP on a few occasions as well. Local government is where I came from. Local government matters to me. Good local government makes communities function properly. But local government isn't functioning. People don't trust it, people don't understand it, people get turned over by what they see as the inaction, ineffectiveness of councillors. But in reality, it's the system. Viability assessment is the words I dread, because all that means is the developer who signed the Section 106 is basically going to come back and say, can't deliver that, tough, what are you going to do about it? Now that is not right, because that's why so many of our new developments are poor, they are not delivering what people agreed to, and therefore we have to change that system. So one very simple fact behind why this is the time we have to look at this and we have to invest properly in this alternative is we have to rebuild local government. And the most effective way to do that is to look at the planning system, to get communities where people want to live and feel that what they've got in their community is what they thought they were getting, not some compromise years down the line where they have to fight for every last facility. So let's all pull together on this. I mean, the government is this thing. I mean, John tried it in the last election, not with a great deal of success, when people say, well, you've got to tax something, you might have to tax land, and then tax our gardens. There is a degree, and I know my old friend Dave Wessel was here, he'd be saying, it's not a question that people can't understand it, we don't explain it to them. He's absolutely right. But we have got to make sure that people see that it's right and appropriate that we tax land value, that is the way to rebuild local government, to get our communities that are going to be built, because we do need the housing and the jobs, and the only way to do that is have a fair, transparent and effective way in which we can do that. And that's why land value capture and the taxation system that is based around it is due and must come forward now. And I hope it's cross-party, because the only way we'll ever do this is if we really get all the parties working together. Thank you for listening to me.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thanks for the passion, and let's hope we can deliver all your requests. But I think, as you said, there's a cross-party. Our final speaker this evening, Lord Best, a wonderful contributor to our discussions and our meetings. James, Lord Best.
Music applause, for which many thanks. Well, thank you, Andrew, very much for sponsoring the APPG and paying for tonight. I think we're all very grateful for an excellent evening, so many thanks to you. But I thought this report was really good. I'm not sure if everybody has read it from cover to cover. I do reckon it's an easy read. It's well put together, this APPG report. I get so many blooming boring reports. I think this is a cracker. Joe, where's he gone? Great stuff, and your team. Also, thanks to Vince and the others who brought an APPG together, because this means you've got cross-party support behind things. That is, it's saying anything that's going to last isn't going to be simply overturned by the next government. You've got to get them all on side. I'm an independent in the House of Lords, so I understand this rather strongly. You've got to get them all on your side, and only then will things last. And we have. That's what the APPG is all about. Now, this is a land value capture. I think everyone's saying it's quite a good idea and let's go for it. It's much bigger than that. I think, people talk about there's never a silver bullet. This is quite close to silver. This may be a nickel or something, but this is pretty close to silver. If you think of the things, we're all agreed on a whole load of stuff. Everyone's agreed on some big things. We want to get an awful lot more homes built, 300,000 homes. We also agree, you're quite right about people's views of house builders. We're all agreed on this one too. The house builders consistently let us down. Whether it's quantity, quality, design, place-making, making anywhere decent, affordable housing, my goodness, reneging on the deals, using this viability loophole to get out of their obligations. No, we don't think that giving the job to the house builders, the major volume house builders, rather than some of the local and smaller house builders who have been done out of business after the crash, we don't think giving these major house builders is the answer. No, it isn't. Our small anxiety, having known what we do want, we want accessible housing, energy efficient housing, green environments, places that really, there's been proper placemaking, proper design, good quality. We know what we want, lots of affordable housing. We have the small problem, oh dear, to do this means that we have to produce homes about 50 to 100,000 pounds per flat or house cheaper than we have done before, to give us that headroom to do all those things, to have the affordable. How on earth could we possibly build houses to create these communities at 50 to 100,000 pounds cheaper for every house? Wow! Then along comes land value capture, and you see the potential opportunities of bridging that gap, of using the increase in the value of the house to put back into the development, into the community, to creating something really useful. I think, almost everybody, once kind of the light bulb moment comes. Nick Boles said it took him a little time. He had to become Minister for Planning first and get all the civil servants to explain things to him. But once he got there, the light bulb flashed and he recognised, yes, capturing the value of the land. Instead of £100,000, £125,000, £150,000 for the house, just all that money going toward the land. Instead of that, using most of that to produce all the things that we want from new development and the quantity of new development that we want as well. Well, I think its moment has come when you've got conservative politicians. It's very important that they are conservative politicians, at least as part of the equation, because otherwise, if a Labour government or a coalition with the Lib Dems or anything else produces the legislation, people will say, well, we'll wait for a Conservative government and then it'll be overturned and we're back to where we started. So if a Conservative government is behind this and propelling it, we're really motoring. It's Oliver Letwin. Oliver Letwin's report's rather good too. I bet nobody's actually ploughed through it. It got very little publicity. It's very good. Oliver Letwin, who is, Nick Boles said he's got a brain 3 times as large as Nick's. He is a very clever man. He's been beavering away in this. He's produced his report, and he advocates a system in which you have the local authority creates a master plan. It acquires the land, if necessary, by compulsory purchase. It acquires the land for no more than 10 times current value. So if the current value is agricultural land at 8,000 an acre, that would be a maximum of 80,000 an acre, not 1 point something million an acre. This is Oliver Letwin talking. You create a development corporation to go with this, to see it through. The development corporation uses private finance to come in, buy the land, put in the infrastructure, and then flog off the individual components with a design code and within the master plan to make it all happen just as you want it to be. Great, well done, Oliver Letwin. Very much notice his report, which makes this very clear and spelled it out. We've got lots of other good omens, I think, at the moment. We've got some mayors out there, these new combined authorities with their mayors. There are new powers that the mayors are seeking or have already got to do new things, to take a big interest in this. I saw in the report the evidence section in which the mayors came forward, and they're very progressive, and they absolutely understand this and want to get behind this whole concept. Buy the land. We'll acquire the land, get private investors to do it for us. We'll be at the back of it with a development corporation that we're controlling. Away we go. So we've got that new dimension of having mayors. We've got the whole concept of new garden villages, new garden towns. Nick was saying that we used to be able to do this. You do a whole new community, Letchworth. I used to be responsible. I ran the Joseph Rowntree Foundation for many years, and we had the garden village built by my Quaker boss, Joseph Rowntree, at the turn of the last century of New Earswick, and he bought the land in 1903. I was still developing it in 2003. That was great, because the value of the land had increased quite a deal since 1903. But he captured the land for us, acquired it as a wealthy philanthropist, and we were still developing out our garden village in New Earswick. You can do great things if the land is coming for little or nothing. That really gives you great opportunities. Rowntree are now getting toward the end of building another new settlement called Derwentthorpe. It's won lots of accolades and awards. It's great. I was there at the start to launch it off. We got the land off the council, public land, at a very reasonable price. And of course, we bought it in 1999, roughly 2000, just on. So by now, the value has increased tremendously, and Rowntree can do great things with that new community. The hour has come too for lots of new towns, new garden towns, garden villages. Government is currently inviting local authorities to put in ideas for such new towns and new garden villages, and I believe there's quite a lot of interest. But now here is the 1961 Housing Act coming sneaking in. Is all this doomed because of this boring piece of legislation that said the value that you have to pay if you want to acquire it for good purposes is not the current value times 10, as Oliver Letwin says, or times something less than 10. It's not that, it's the hope value. It includes everything that might happen. It's the maximum possible figure that you can think of. That's what you've got to pay if you want to compulsorily acquire anything. And it certainly is the case that changing that, reforming the 1961 Land Compensation Act would be a major step forward. That would be great. And it may be that we just have to wait until all this Brexit and everything else has passed us by and we get a chance to have a go at this. But I do ask the question, are there things we can get on with now? Can we make any progress now? And Matthew Taylor, Lord Matthew Taylor, who I don't think has made it tonight, but Matthew is a great player in this space, and he put down an amendment. I backed his amendment in the House of Lords to the 2016 Housing and Planning Act, and he put down another amendment to the Neighbourhood Planning Act of 2017. And these two amendments take us back to the New Towns Act of 1946, all that 70 whatever years before we were changing it. And that act says you can buy land compulsorily at existing use value, existing use, not a multiplier, not 10 times that, at existing use value, provided you go through certain hoops. And this was for new towns, new relatively large settlements. Now, this was never reformed, but the hoops have been unattractive hoops for people to go through. 1946, just after the war, the state government will do things, big government will do this. It's all in the hands of the Secretary of State. An Act of Parliament is required for this new town to be set up. It doesn't have to be 15,000, it could be 5,000, it could be 2,000. So it could be a garden village, if you like, but a new town. But it requires an Act of Parliament. The Secretary of State has to approve this Act of Parliament. The Secretary of State then appoints a board which takes sole responsibility, and the ownership, the value that is tied up there, belongs to the Secretary of State. This has been unattractive to a lot of governments because they haven't felt like government nationalising land in this way, taking charge. But it's also been very unattractive to local authorities, because instead of the local authority, which you'd expect as the local democratically elected body having responsibility for the creation of this new enterprise, it's been the Secretary of State. And when there's any profits to be made and anything to clean up at the end, to take the money away at the end, it's been the Secretary of State. So Matthew really, I just tagged along behind and put my name to the amendment and tried to keep up. But Matthew Taylor's amendments say you don't need a whole Act of Parliament to do these new towns. You can do a new town with secondary legislation. The Secretary of State can put an order in Parliament, nobody ever votes against those things, it sails through. The Secretary of State can approve a board, but the board doesn't have to be appointed by the Secretary of State. It can be a local government control board in charge of the development. That's different. And the assets can belong to that board for the local community. So suddenly, the old new towns legislation becomes attractive once again. And I think Matthew is busy working on trying to get as many local authorities as possible to take an interest in this, to put in a bid for a new garden town, a new garden village, and do it on this basis, setting up a development corporation that is local government controlled and has its master plan, and it would have the power to buy, and the landowners wake up and take notice when they understand this, an existing use value. So the boring old, if it's farmland, agricultural land value, which means the council can say, well, look, we know we can buy it at agricultural value, but we're going to give you 10 times agricultural value. We're going to give you 80,000 an acre instead of the 8,000. And wow, this is not really as good as the 1.5 billion that might have been expected. But it's an awful lot better than just the existing use value, which has been revived now with this recreation of the old New Towns Act. So I think we want to get on with some of this while we're waiting for the politicians to make up their mind about Brexit. There are going to be 1,200 bills, I was told the other day, through Parliament. So there go all the civil servants working out all those things. But we've got to wait for that, we've got to wait for it, that's very tedious. There is something to get on with, and bless you, Matthew, here, you're out there doing it. And bless you to the APPG, to you, Andrew, to everyone else, because I think you're stoking up the flames here. Your hour has come, the moment has arrived, the dawn has, whatever dawns do. I think this is the moment. Land value capture is here to stay. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you so much, Rob. That's really, really inspiring words. Thank you. I'd like to say we actually have additional speakers. Leader of the Green Party, Caroline Lucas.
It's actually a former leader, but no, I should do something for the gender balance, so that's what I was going to say. I'm not going to, you will have a million reasons why capture and value taxation is so important. Long been Green Party policy for decades, and so I'm delighted to see the idea getting more and more traction. I'm delighted that the all-party group is working so well together. I agree that it absolutely has to be a cross-party thing if it's going to be successful. But I only wanted to add one thing, and that was simply that I think in order to really make this idea fly, we do need to take some comms advice and communication advice. I still don't think we are communicating this idea in a way that is nearly powerful enough, compelling enough, speaking to the very real problems that face in particular young people right now if you're trying to get onto the housing ladder. And it feels to me that there is so much potential behind this idea. And yet somehow I think we're still trapped a little bit by all of the complexities of the language around it and so on. And so my big suggestion is that we genuinely go out and find one of the best comms agencies and really get them to help us, because this idea ought to be on everyone's lips. Maybe we need to change the name of it, I don't know. But it seems to me that it goes to the heart of so much around social injustice, around the injustice between different generations, around trying to get hope for young people to be able to think that they too might well be able to get their foot on a housing ladder at some time in the not too distant future. And this speaks to all of those things. It speaks to real injustice. Just reading the other day about the house in Westminster that was the most expensive house that was sold a year or so ago. It went for 16 million. The cheapest property was in County Durham. It went for 18,500. And yet the owner of the new property in Westminster was only going to pay an extra £250 a year in council tax over and above the owner of the property in County Durham. I mean, this just speaks to injustice in such a major way. And I just think this idea could still get rocket boosters behind it in a way that it still hasn't quite yet. We're sort of, I don't know why all these aviation metaphors come to my mind. I'm sorry, it's a bit like that, it's not good. It feels like we're kind of on the wrong way and we're trumping along and we're good in there. But I really believe that this is an idea that can get lifted off very soon. But I do think we need to get some advice about how to really popularise it, which doesn't mean setting out a single iota of what it's about, but I think it does mean making sure that it's something that when you're down the pub and you can talk about it without, you know what happens if you went out and start talking about it, depending on your club and things that will be interested, that a lot of people just simply wouldn't get it. And time is running out for people to get this idea because it is so important. So that's all I wanted to add, and I'm really grateful to be part of this, and wish you all the best in the next steps forward.
Thank you very much, Gareth. We are going to have a session on, in March just on communications. So that's something we're going to start working. Rob's going to head it up. Representing the young people. Take everything said on board.
No, I just do feel.
Obviously, the importance of government, the importance of cross-party support, I think, the need for reform of business rates, reform of council tax. I think clearly COVID was a busy year in 2019, given some of the guidance we've received. And obviously, just now, Caroline has encouraged us to take sort of guidance around how we communicate some of the challenges. I think one thing I find fascinating about that value capture and that value tax is the more I read about it, and that is very much an education piece, and that's incumbent on all of us to think of ways that we can improve. Thank you very much, Joe. Are there copies of the reports around for people to digest and take home?
There's a couple still left. I think most people have one, but anyone who speaks to myself or Rob.
Brilliant. And if you haven't received it by email, then do shout, or give your email to Joe or Rob or myself. Thank you so much for coming. It's a busy time. I think we have a room till 9 o'clock if you'd like to network with everyone. Thank you for coming. Have a great holiday season. See you next year.